What is up, fight fans? It is 1 o'clock in the Mile High, so you know what that means. It is time for the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. We are coming to you live from the number 38 presented to you by Volo. Got my man Danny Bailey, as always, behind the boards, holding it down for us. Guys, this week we have a special guest in studio with us. It's been a long time coming to making this interaction or this connection here in person. We have Dan Pirnazari of FightWave.
Yes, sir. It's 5 years. Better late than never. Last time we spoke, well, I was, just starting this out. And now, 5 years later, finally make the pilgrimage over to Denver, Colorado. And here we are on the radio. Can take that one off the bucket list.
You know, guys, I've been in this game for a little bit of time now. You know, I have a little bit of a long in the tooth veteran, if you will. I remember when Dan was just a young teenage kid, a little awkward, curly-headed dude popping up with his, just the top, like nose and eyes above the frame of the camera, so nervous to be on camera and afraid to be out in front of the people. Now he's out there booming and soaring in his own space, doing interviews with fighters all over the world, has a massive account out there with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So again, Dan, we're grateful to have you out here, and especially with you making this trip out here to Colorado and bouncing around to some different gyms, making the time to stop in with us today. So thank you.
Thank you, man. The privilege is all mine, just coming in here, getting some quality conversations underway. And yeah, definitely for a city like Colorado with such a steep, sports culture, and definitely, just great gyms, great people, people who come in here, they're grinders, they put the work on. I've been to Factory X. I know you have a strong affiliation with Factory X. Shout out Factory X, and a huge thank you to a special shout out to the Montoya family for just the hospitality that they've shown me. I want to give a special shout out to them. Yeah, man, the privilege is all mine. I knew Colorado was somewhere I had to be. I knew it was a city I had to, check off the bucket list, and we make it happen in 2025. Big things coming for, I imagine, both the comments from the Peanut Gallery family and also for the FightWave family. So I'm excited to get this on their way.
Absolutely. We're going to talk more with Dan on his personal side of things here later on in the program. But first and foremost, want to give a shout out to everybody here at the Mile High Sports crew. They are doing incredible work, especially right now. It's kind of the lull for the core four of sports, especially right now. I mean, even Major League Baseball, all-star break sort of time frame. So it's a little bit of a downtime, but they are still cranking out incredible content for you guys, whether it is related to the CU Buffs, Broncos, and NFL offseason talk as we approach training camp here in the next couple of weeks. You have Avalanche offseason talk, plenty of things in the discussion and on the burners for the Denver Nuggets, especially, there's been a lot of talk about what's the future for Joker out there and the potential contract situation and whatnot. And then we have the Rockies at the All-Star break, sitting here at 22-74. Will there be any improvements made after the All-Star break? Pretty doubtful, but speaking of the All-Star game, I was pretty excited to see everybody back wearing their team's jerseys. I'm all for wearing the All-Star kits for the different elements of All-Star week, like the Derby and so all those things, so on and so forth. I'm cool with that. But in the actual All-Star game itself, I love, regardless of what the sport is, I love being able to see the players be able to represent their team. Because it's for some of them, you might be the only representative for your squad for the game itself. Obviously, in this year, you have a ton of Dodgers, whatever, blah, 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 at the top teams. But there were some of those years where, hey, man, all we had from the Rockies representing us were a Brian Fuentes or a somebody of that nature who, that was cool to see your team's logos and your representation out there on the field with the rest of them. But again, make sure to check out the Mile High Sports Network, whether that is on the podcast side of things, the website, magazine, merch drops, any of these events that we have going down here with the watch parties at the number 38. Hit that like, share, and subscribe for them wherever possible. Moving along to the Colorado rundown, as Dan mentioned, we have such a rich scene in Colorado for all sports, but especially within the combat sports scene. One of the best markets in the entire country, folks. We have lots of shows going down over the course of the next few weeks. There'll be a gap for a couple in September, and then mid to end September all the way through October, ramping up with a ton of stuff going on through the rest of this quarter. But this weekend, we have Airtight Boxing going down at the Eclipse Event Center. That's going to be Friday night on the 18th. Going to be doing some commentary on that, doing play-by-play with my man Steven Paprocki on the color there. So come and check us out this Friday at the Eclipse Event Center. Next weekend, we have Sparta with an all-boxing show on the 25th. Following from that, on August 15th, we are coming through with a massive card for Colorado Combat Club. That is going to be Friday night at the Stampede.
Definitely a good one.
Oh, there are some incredible fights.
Shout out Grant Neal. Grant Neal, the absolute legend, absolute stud. Love Grant Neal.
Yeah, Grant Neal going to be headlining that card for us. We have a rematch, I should say, of two of the premier flyweight prospects in the state. We have Micah Haas taking on Alex Rego. That was a fight that they originally met at the very, very beginning of their pro careers. That was Micah's pro debut. That was Rego's second pro fight. They're going to be running it back on that card. Again, a ton of matchups that you can sink your teeth into all across that card. That is going to be on the 15th. The very next night, BYB is back for another Stockyard Brawl here. That is going to be on Saturday the 16th. Our buddy Georgie the Buzzsaw Martinez, he's going to be making his bare knuckle debut on that card. And George is he's putting in a lot of work, preparing himself and ramping up for this opportunity. He's someone who I'm really excited to see how he does on the bare knuckle end of things, because George, we all know of his background and that he grew up on these. He's one of those guys who went from being a legit street fighter turned pro MMA fighter. Also has a tremendous amount of wrestling experience to his back pocket, but now gets to kind of specialize it a little bit, take the gloves off, and gets to go slug it out. I'm interested to see how Georgie's going to do in the Trigon on that night, and we're all there for you, Buzzsaw. Following that, at the end of the month, on August 30th, we have Sparta back with a fight night. Moving along, though, we're going to recap the weekend. This last weekend in Nashville, the UFC had a tremendous fight night.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you just had the way that the main event went for all of the minute that it lasted, the post-fight antics alone that we got from Derek Lewis made that 100% worth it. Derek Lewis added some more cushion to his all-time knockouts record by beating Taliesin Teixeira with that knockout in the first round, which, there was some dispute from some people or Teixeira himself about the stoppage. But when you're committing a foul by grabbing and literally pulling yourself up, the official has one of two choices. That is a fight finishing sequence, considering that you just got dropped, leading to you trying to pull yourself up via the fence. The official has two choices. You're not going to really stop the action and take a point in that moment.
Yeah.
So the other option is you stop the fight. And that's exactly what Jason Herzog did. I mean, I think Jason Herzog is one of the best officials that MMA has to offer. And in that moment, I would agree that he made the right call. If Teixeira doesn't use the fence to pull himself up, he would have continued to have massive can-ham fists on the end of Derek Lewis's arm, hitting his face.
I definitely agree. I think, when you look at that fight, a lot of people like to argue quick stoppages, early premature stoppages, but it kind of reminds me of, there was another fight that really stood out to me, which was the Salkeld Anshul Jubilee earlier this year when Quillan Salkeld from Australia made his UFC debut. He got Jubilee with a pretty nasty shot, and Jubilee went down. Ref stepped in while Jubilee was on a single leg. Had he not stepped in, it might be premature in the sense that the guy is literally not out. But at the end of the day, they're in there for fighter safety. And like you said, if there's no grabbing the fence or anything in that capacity, you're talking about a heavyweight Derek Lewis coming in, I would say, one of the strongest shapes of his career at 40, 41 years of age, which is a testament to, his professionalism. I think people like to talk about Derek Lewis not having a lot of professionalism or being kind of like a jokester type. But I think when you look at the pedigree, you don't get, I think he leads the UFC in most heavyweight knockouts ever, right?
Most knockouts
UFC history. Yeah. And, when you talk about a guy like him being on the receiving end of punches from a guy like that, if you are not in a prime position to counter or get out of that bad position, the ref is absolutely and entirely in the right to stop that fight. Because at the end of the day, Taliesin Teixeira, the young prospect coming into this fight, one fight into his UFC career, gets thrusted up into a fight against someone like Derek Lewis. I mean, at the end of the day, you are the one that's taking that step up. If you are not ready for it, the ref is going to kind of recognize it. And that's not a diss on Teixeira. We've seen it throughout recent UFC times where a fighter will have a very strong debut performance and then they will fight a veteran, someone like Abus Magomedov, defeats Dustin Stoltzfus in his UFC debut, 17 or 20-second knockout, then goes and fights Sean Strickland. Looked great for a round, and then after that round, pretty much faded entirely.
And that's where, from the official standpoint, we've spoken with Big John here on the program, and it's something that sentiment echoes with those higher level guys across the board. Is you have to be aware of who is in the cage when you're officiating, because you're not going to officiate every fight the same.
Yeah.
You're going to be a little bit more attentive with certain guys, and especially based off of their explosiveness or their power. Or if you're refereeing a Derek Lewis fight, you have to know that you've got to be ready to spring into action to stop that at any given moment. And when we're talking about the consequences of being a half a second late versus a half a second early, I've always maintained that outside of a title fight, I would much rather that a referee err half a second early than they do half a second late.
Yeah.
Especially, as you mentioned, with somebody like Thaleson Teixeira, who could potentially have a future run throughout the division. This just was too much too early for him. That also speaks to how just limited the division is overall in terms of top tier talent. They were trying to springboard him there, but that's a completely different discussion. You don't want to run the chance that you completely burn him by having him get just completely sent to the shadow realm and take the super necessaries from Derek Lewis in that sense.
Yeah.
Where Herb Dean screwed the pooch in the Derek Lewis fight against Curtis Blades, Jason Herzog did right by Thaleson Teixeira.
Yeah.
He was ready for that big shot right then and there, and he sprung into action before there were the potential, send you to the shadow realm and follow up with a couple of shots.
Yeah.
I think that was definitely it was a great call in that sense. But then afterwards, we got just about every black beastism possible, which that's why you love Derek Lewis. He's on the corner to mark his territory, takes his shorts off because his balls are hot, throws the cup out into the crowd,
calls Donald Trump,
talks to the president inside of the octagon. They ask, who do you want next? Said, I've been gone for 2 weeks. I want my wife next. There's going to be a whole lot of ground and pound. You'll find it. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's why we love Derek Lewis. And that's why, even despite some of his ups and downs, Derek Lewis is one fight away from a title shot right now in the heavyweight division. He's never fought Tom. He goes out there and he wins one more fight just because of, again, when we're talking about how limited the heavyweight division is, especially with John out of the equation seemingly, your star power that you have in that division is next to none. Yeah. You have one guy who, no matter what, is a needle mover. And that's Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
He's always going to be in the mix, especially if he still has the ability to knock people out. Oh, no, you can continue to sell that of him being your knockout king. He's literally got knockout kings tattooed across the front of his chest. You can continue to sell that. Yeah. That's something that you have in Derek Lewis.
I would definitely agree. I think, like you mentioned, with how kind of narrow the heavyweight division is right now, there's not a lot of talent that is, I would say, primed to fight for the title right now that you can make the justification for. I think there's 3 names that come to mind, and one of them is honestly, I think, going to catch you by surprise a little bit. I think you have Cyril Gane, who's always going to be in that title conversation. He goes and fights another guy coming off a title loss. He's always ready to go because he's one of those guys that's beaten everyone else in the division. He's defeated the likes of Alexander Volkov, arguably. I don't think he won that Volkov fight. I thought that he lost that fight personally. He's defeated the likes of Tai Tuivasa. He fought his run to the title. He pretty much beat a lot of the mainstays in the division. You got Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Volkov the first time around. And then you've got JDS. Like, he beat a lot of those guys, so he gets a little bit of that leeway. So I think Gane is like the guy that you could argue could fight. And then Derek Lewis on the entertainment side, this isn't any knock on any of the current heavyweights, but like you said, he has that needle mover. He's got that personality. And in an era where fighters, I feel like it's 50-50. It's a split amongst the room where some want to market themselves. Some absolutely are just naturals at market. Or some want to market themselves. Some have no interest in marketing themselves. They just want to fight and they think that's what's going to sell. Derek Lewis is a prime example of when you can do both, where instinctually he just has all those intangibles of what you would want when you're marketing an event. Like, he's got the funny one-liners, he's got the personality, he's got the fights to back up and justify why a title shot with him would sell. Look at the one of the very first titles. I think it was his first title shot, him versus Daniel Cormier, right? Yeah. Him versus Daniel Cormier. You know, Derek Lewis, during that press conference, back when press conferences were actually still worth watching, you know, he was over there. DC's like, he's like, I want to know why you don't like me. He's like, it's because you disrespected that Popeye's chicken, you know, like that is just something very instinctually, like, you don't get one-liners like that with anyone else. It's a testament to his personality and how, you know, easily he can resonate with a lot of fight fans. I think that he's always in that conversation, like you said. And I think the third name, one that I mentioned earlier, Alexander Volkov. I think that Volkov has leveled up his, you know, just game tremendously at around 35, 36 years of age. He's continued to show why I feel like he's one of the more underappreciated heavyweights of our time. Just his style. I mean, look at his striking against Gunn. He kept the range almost pitch perfect, and bar a really bad decision, which even, you know, obviously UFC boss Dana White said, horrible decision. You know, you got pretty much effed out of that fight or squeezed out of that fight. You know, he's up there. He's continued to level up in an era where we're seeing a lot of fighters regress as they get older. Obviously, heavyweight, a different situation. It feels like he's only just scratching the surface of continuing to improve. So those are kind of the three names. Lewis, I think, of course, top of that list right now for me personally.
Yeah, definitely some options that they have in that mix. We're going to run through some more of this card just to burn through it before we get to our next segment here. Man, Mean Machine is a bad dude.
Oh, yeah.
That's 6 in a row now. It did interrupt his knockout streak, but Mean Machine is a guy who is definitely he's a problem for a lot of guys at 145. You have a hard-headed, heavy-handed Mexican who loves to bang it out and who has a lot of knockouts and early knockouts on his resume. No, that's a dude who he presents a lot of problems for guys going forward. You had Vitor Petrino looking like a Greek god in there at heavyweight, weighing in at 250 pounds for his maiden voyage up there at heavyweight, and he picks up the victory against Austin Lane, which we said last week, you know, this was kind of a confidence builder or a get back win for Petrino in that sense. They like what they have in him. You had a veteran heavy matchup between Chris Curtis and Max Griffin. They scrapped it out with Chris getting the nod. Very close fight. Friends with both of them, you know, don't really want to offer up too much because sometimes that gets real sensitive.
Gets you in a hot water.
Split decision. You know,
I can chime in there.
Very close.
Yeah. I think, like you mentioned, Steve Garcia, insane. Called up some great call outs, by the way. Called out some of your boys, which I'm sure they'd love to get that fight. And then also, you know, Chris Curtis, I feel like I've said this before. I think the social media presence kind of gets to him a little bit. I think that he definitely plays into it a little bit more than he should. He's a great guy from what I've heard on all accounts. Has me blocked on Instagram for some odd reason, but that's a conversation for another day. And then I think that just unlucky. Like every fight I've seen of Chris Curtis, this guy is either getting fouled, you know, blatant clash of heads, nut shots, or eye pokes. It's the triumvirate. This guy has had everything happen to him over like the last 6 or 7 fights that he's had. He's probably been fouled in over 50% of them.
Oh, big time. Jake Matthews, he's quietly climbing the ranks. Yeah. He's 30 years old. He has 22 trips to the octagon. Pretty impressive little resume that he's building for himself there. I mean, obviously 170 right now is a bubbling division. It is surging toward being one of the hottest weight classes in all of the UFC. You had Lauren Murphy laying the gloves down. She does a lot of her training here out of Denver. So respect and salute to you, lucky Lauren Murphy. She put on a hell of a fight on the way out. She didn't get the nod in that close fight. It was a very close fight that she made really competitive. But for me, the best parts of that were not even in the fight itself. It was her post-fight speech where she said, like, hey, like, most of all, I want to thank me. I'm the one who put in the work to get into this position, being the former title challenger and overcoming a lot of the life adversity and circumstances, the addiction, all that she had. I want to thank me for taking the lumps, taking the hits, being consistent through time. I loved hearing that speech from her because everybody always wants to say, especially when it's, let's call it for what it is, pursuing fighting and this as a career, it is a selfish endeavor in a lot of ways. And everybody wants to always say, oh, I did it for my family or this. Well, bro, you can go work a much safer and more, family-friendly gig somewhere else. So in a large sense, you're doing this for you. You're doing this for yourself. So I love that she was honest in the moment. She was transparent. And then afterwards, when her opponent comes up to her and was basically like she was saying, like, thank you, or exchanging pleasantries with her. But Laura Murphy, just being the brash, hilarious lady that she is in that sense, she just looks at her straight up and says, I don't know what the F you're saying. And the hot mic caught it. Like, she just looks at her like, I don't know what the F you're saying. I could not. I watched that clip of her saying that probably like 15 times in a row and laughed just as hard every single time. But another guy who is in the heavyweight division, who is going to be a problem, and because he does have a personality, it does help that he has his brother also in the mix. He was a very notable guy. But Walter Walker is a guy at heavyweight who he might be a future contender. Give him the turkey right now for 3 heel hooks in a row. That guy presents some problems.
I definitely agree. And in an era where we're talking about like heavyweight is so kind of in dire need of talent, having a guy like Walter Walker come through, who granted we've already had an introduction to through his brother, Johnny Walker, of course, UFC light heavyweight Johnny Walker. It's good, especially someone who is fighting and is like marketing themselves very strongly, is somebody who is very stellar on the ground. Let's not mince corners, having a heavyweight with the jiu-jitsu expertise like Walter Walker, it's a rare commodity. We've got wrestlers, we've got guys like Curtis Blades, we've got strikers and very well-rounded individuals like the Tom Aspinalls and the Cyril Gane, debatable. Tom Aspinall is a good example of like a heavyweight with like a good grappling base and a good striking base. We've got the strikers like the Alexander Volkovs, but grapplers, I feel like it's been kind of a hot minute since we've seen a heavyweight grappler come in, bar John Jones. Yeah, but like pure jiu-jitsu guys that come in and they have
Curtis Blades is a great wrestler. Yeah. You had Alexander Romanov, who he had good Greco, and then just somehow decided to go completely lazy, and he's fell off massively.
On the subject of Romanov, I gotta say, man, I don't know what happens with this guy, but every time he's been fouled like a nut shot or like a low blow,
he finds the way out.
This guy finds the way out. Like even in the PFL, it just happened recently. He fought in the PFL, took a low blow, and literally, I think they carted him off.
Yeah, he got carted off from that. But when we're talking, that might be a fun matchup in the future to see Buchecha, who just got signed to the UFC, and Walter Walker, two guys that are good grapplers. But that might also be a levels discussion though too at the same time. And Walter Walker is a good MMA jiu-jitsu guy, but
Buchecha is a different.
Buchecha is a Mount Rushmore type of heavyweight grappler in that sense. So again, some potential matchup that might materialize here in the near future. Mike Davis picked up a knockout victory on the card. Bro, him and Isaac Dolgarian are doppelgangers. I kept on like out of like the corner of my eye glancing like, dude, he looks so much like Isaac. But
he might be Armenian too.
He might have some in him, Then Fatima Klein, she opened up the card. She is the future of 115 pounds. Fatima Klein had that big head kick knockout that moved her record to 8-1 at just 25 years young, former CFFC champion. Her one loss was last year here in Denver at Ball Arena to the now white hot prospect at flyweight. So short notice, up a weight class against Jasmine Jasuda Vicious. Hey, I'm not going to knock her for that one loss. Like, that's what she had to do to be able to get in. She trains with a good camp with Blanchfield and crew. I think that she at 25 and being able to do the things that she does already, she set herself up for a very bright future going forward.
I mean, that was probably my favorite performance of the night. You talk about, especially in the women's mixed martial arts realm, at strawweight, it feels like we've been seeing, the gals that come up at 125. We had like a few years back, we had Manon, Erin, Casey O'Neill, and a couple of others like really come up at the same time and really become mainstays in the division. But at 115 or strawweight, we haven't really seen a talent that comes in and makes such a strong, impressive debut. Her and Shi Ming, I think, have the makings to become the next kind of fan favorite female fighters in the UFC. Shi Ming is just so wholesome. And then you got Fatima Klein, who off of like a very unconventional, almost Leon Edwards-esque angle, shoots, like throws up a kick and pitch perfect, I gotta say, high kick on Melissa Martinez. Like you said, only 25 years of age, 8-1 against I would say arguably future title challenger in the form of Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think the future is very bright for her. She's probably got to be my favorite performance on the night.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Moving along from the UFC card, we had CJJC Grapple Games 2 Attack Bands that went down last Friday night. Just want to give a shout out to our winner of our 4-man bracket from that show in Anthony Bendy. He went through a couple of really tough matchups in the process. I mean, the angle, I should have sent this in for you, Danny, but the angle that his arm was in from a submission attempt by Seth Tumbleson, how he got out of that is beyond me. I mean, I'm right across the fence from it, doing play-by-play and announcing in the process, and it was disgusting.
I mean, you showed me the clip, and I saw the clip, and I wasn't even there in person. I was grimacing. I'm like,
just looking at the angle in which the arm, like, so my elbow, if you're seeing it right here, is bent, right? Well, imagine the other direction. And he somehow, like, he got out of it. Anthony Bendy is literally, as his namesake suggests, he is a bendy man. That dude has Gumby joints, double, triple jointed, whatever you want to say in that sense, to walk away from it and be fine. And, you know, so congratulations to him picking up that victory there. Across town, we had Sparta with a fight night card. Excuse me. There was a rematch in Pro Muay Thai between Dan Wilson and Clem Lacroix. A thriller. I told you guys last week in the preview that fight alone is worth the price of admission. Those are two guys who have a tremendous level of professional Muay Thai experience, who have fought all over the world. They fought the first time for us in the cage at Combat Club a couple of summers ago, and they had the chance to run it back this time. Clem picked up the victory again here in this fight, but a thriller once again. Those leg kicks are so crisp and so fresh from him. Macy Adkins also on the card. I mean, she is like a bullet without a name on it every single time that she fights. She is fired out of a cannon. She has bad intentions with everything that she throws, and she's a submission hunter too. If she has the chance to tie you up and to grab your neck and strangle you, that's exactly what she's going to do. That's exactly what happened on that first round finish the other night. Also, a barn burner of a matchup that we highlighted last week. Two of the bright young ladies here on the Colorado scene. You had Emma Soho taking on Riley Colburn, both who have competed across multiple different platforms, multiple rule sets here, all in the Colorado scene. Tremendous upside for each of them. Emma was able to pick up that third round sub, but again, hey, I can do nothing but give these two young ladies props and just recognize game and say that the future is bright for you too. And I can't wait to see what's next. You know, obviously there's the thrill and the agony on one side. It's a complete level of elation for Emma. It's been a long time getting back into the cage from some of the adversity that she's had to deal with. And on the other side, unfortunately for Riley, it's the agony of having to go through the defeat process. But at just a young age, Riley has such a resume and such a level of combat sports experience that I think will only continue to pay massive dividends for her going forward. And I'm excited to see what both of these ladies do in the future going forward. Moving along from that, this weekend we have a massive UFC card. We have a bit of a bittersweet matchup in the main event.
That's one way to put it. I mean,
it's going down in New Orleans, so you know I say it's bittersweet from the side of things of, man, like, I've echoed this sentiment for quite some time now that we have to appreciate the greats that we have right now while we have them. Yeah. It's a main event trilogy fight between Max Blessed Holloway taking on the Diamond Dustin Poirier. This is Dustin's retirement fight. It's in his home state of Louisiana. It has been reported that he will be having Lil Wayne walking out with him.
How sick is that? I mean, hey, if you're going to do it for anyone, you got to do it for Dustin Poirier. I mean, that's just cherry on top to just an incredible career.
Yeah, I mean, the resume that Dustin has, there's very few guys that have something that parallels it. Dustin, and on the flip side, and to a certain extent, I can kind of feel for Max this week because there's so much pomp and circumstance being placed on Dustin. And he's like, I mean, I'm here too. But also, I think that Max is that much of a professional. Max is that much of a martial artist in his own right that he says, like, okay, well, that's fine. Give him all the glory right now because I'm going to go and I'm going to steal it on Saturday night. Unfortunately, that's, you know, his agony will be my thrill. this is going to be my chance to right the ship. I've lost the first 2 fights in our series. I'm here to try to rectify that by getting this win and retaining my BMF belt.
Yeah, and
Dustin's fought for it once, lost against Justin Gaethje. Max won that title off of Gaethje. You know, I mean, it's a cool belt and concept out there.
Yeah. I think one thing that stood out to me was I think Max Holloway put up a tweet, and I don't know if we can find this tweet, but there was a tweet where he said like Dustin took away his win streak, and then also, or I think it was his undefeated record, and then also took away his opportunity, I think, for the interim belt. And now he said, I think he's gonna take his retirement. So it's like a cool concept of like within certain trademark milestones of Holloway's career, Poirier has been the guy to kind of stunt that further trajectory. And now at what appears to be kind of like the epitome or pinnacle of Poirier's, illustrious career, Max wants to be the guy to take that moment from him. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to these two guys, they respect each other so much as competitors. I mean, to fight someone twice, and even there's a clip of Dustin Poirier talking about, I think it was becoming a father, and Max Holloway congratulated him even at the press conference. It's kind of surreal just to see two guys that have such a prominent respect for each other as not only competitors, but also as individuals, as fathers, as you name it. But at the end of the day, they fight Saturday night. And I mean, winner take, I feel like it's not necessarily about 2-0 Dustin being up, but about that kind of last score, that last stand. I'm very excited to see it. I know you are as well.
Oh yeah, it's potentially going to be one of those waterworks type of fights, folks. There might be some onions being sliced in the room at certain points, but we'll let that get there once it gets to that point. There's been some criticism of some of the fights on the card, but I think that there's some matchups on here that to me are definitely worth tuning in for. You can make the case for, should some of them be the placement that they have? I mean, there's always going to be people who are upset, and there's going to be people who are unhappy about certain stuff out there in the process. But you get Paulo Costa making his return against Roman Kopylov. I don't know if there's any bit of the old Boachinas still in there, but if the old Boachinas still has anything left, that could make for a very exciting fight, because Kopylov loves to throw and he gets wild, but I think that Roman's grappling also goes kind of under the radar.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think just the main thing is we need to see what version of, like you said, Paulo Costa shows up, because there was the version that showed up during pandemic times of him and Marvin Vettori, where he showed up significantly overweight. I think that the Adesanya fight kind of really set Paulo down, kind of a downfall trajectory mentally. I think he was his own worst enemy in that fight, and then the fights that led up to after it, with the constant pullouts, the injuries, the staph infections, falling out of kind of favor with the company in the time that he was fighting post Adesanya and that like Fight Island bout. But make no mistake, like you said, if we get any version of the old Paulo Costa showing up with the grappling expertise that he has, Kopylov notoriously struggling on the ground. He's worked on his get-ups. He's worked on his takedown defense, but Paulo Costa, a decorated grappler despite all odds. And I know there's like an infamous clip of him and Logan Paul grappling, which, make no mistake, like, credit where credit is due. Logan Paul is a stellar wrestler. I know he's an influencer or whatnot, but Paulo Costa has very underrated grappling intangibles. He's a great jiu-jitsu grappler. And I think if he takes Kopylov down, it's going to be a very long night for him. I just hope that he puts the pride aside and starts fighting like a competitor and a contender again, not like an entertainer. I know we said that with the Strickland fight, where we're like, this fight's going to deliver. This fight's going to be incredible. Ends up being the biggest dud of a fight, barely last 20 seconds, 30 seconds. I just think, we need Paulo Costa to kind of tune into what got him to the dance to begin with, which is that pressure. He thrives off fighting in pressure. Kopylov, a great kickboxer and, counter striker. I just want to see Paulo Costa come in with the right mindset and really emphasize getting Kopylov to the ground and not playing into his game of striking with Kopylov. Because if he stands on the feet with Kopylov, it's a far closer fight than he's going to want to make it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you have Kevin Holland going up against D-Rod. That's a fight of a couple of veterans with a lot of experience at 170 pounds. I'm going to hit a Bondio break right quick, but I'm going to let Dan talk to you about a couple of these matchups that he has. I mean, this guy's a wealth of knowledge too in his own right. I will be right back with you folks.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just looking at the card, of course, we've got Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. Kind of an interesting scenario with Kevin Holland. I think for me at least, just thinking about Kevin Holland, it's a very interesting trajectory what's been going on with him, because I remember during 2020 when he had first fought, it was on Fight Island. I think it was again, or not Fight Island, 2020 when he first fought during the pandemic against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. It was just a very interesting set of circumstances where, I feel like during that time, really solidifying his base, being somebody that is just, I guess, like developing his personality, goes 5-0 in that calendar year, has some setbacks, kind of, I hate to say it, becoming a guy in the division where you look at Kevin Holland as a competitor and he's somebody that they're like, okay, if you want to make it to the title, he's kind of become that, not gatekeeper per se, but that guy where it's like, all right, you want to compete. We're going to give you a high profile matchup that we think you could win, but Bart, you don't win, we're going to bring you back down into the rankings and have you fight somebody who we know that you have a good percentage to win against. So it feels like, and then Jordan's just back, but I was talking about, like, you talk about Kevin Holland right now. It feels like he's kind of always been this company guy, but it feels like they've given him opportunities not only to prove he's not that company guy, but he just kind of came up short in everything. Like we had the Jack Dilla Maddalena fight. I remember at 185, we had him versus Derek Brunson. That was an opportunity for him to climb up the rankings. He started taking these short notice fights, started coming up short. And then now he's kind of been this guy who will have 2 emphatic wins and then a really big loss, or like lose in a dominant fashion to like a guy who's up and coming. You see the guys that he's fought that have made it to that next level. Jack Della Maddalena, great example. Fought JDM, got outclassed on the feet. JDM now the welterweight champion of the planet, or of the world in the UFC, and it's just now it feels like Holland needs to get an emphatic win here over Daniel Rodriguez to prove that, hey, I need to get someone big next if he's serious about fighting for that gold, which is all in good, but you've got to kind of decide what you want. Yeah.
I think that that consistency is going to be the big deal for him. It's, if you will, been his Achilles heel throughout time. The fights where, and we've said this on the program every single time that he fights, when Kevin Holland is inspired and when he actually cares about the fight, he's a problem. When he doesn't, that's where you run into the RDR type of matchups, or you have these kind of, for lack of a better reference, you have these appearances where he lays an egg. He goes out there and he collects a nice check in the process, and this is a quick turnaround from his last fight that he's already back in there. Kevin Holland makes a lot of money each fight, and it's because he's been so willing to take the risk and step up in so many of these. But it's a good matchup for him to go out there against a very quality veteran who I think he does have a vastly superior grappling advantage. D-Rod's a good boxer, so I'll be interested to see how that kung fu approach from Kevin Holland goes up against D-Rod's boxing. But there's also a couple of other fights on the card that I think that are worthy of giving a quick mention to. Don't have a whole lot of time left just to run through a couple of them, but we have a grudge match that has a chance to actually play out in the cage.
Yeah.
These two guys fought on a casino floor about a year and a half, somewhere around in there ago, and they have the chance to finally settle their score. Again, that is the beautiful part about our business, is if you have differences, if you have a score that you want to settle, you can let these do this. And that is what we had the opportunity to see on Saturday night as Marvin Vettori takes on Brendan Allen.
Oh, what a good fight. I mean, just talking about grudge matches, I remember when they were at the PFL, they came to blows in the lobby of the casino. And then now talking about a fight that is a must-win matchup for both of these guys. It's not just a fight that's a grudge match per se, but Vettori obviously coming off a devastating loss, not in the octagon, just in life, losing his brother and being somebody who has struggled to make it to the octagon at times, whether it's just injuries outside of camp or being somebody that has just not been able to show the best version of himself. I remember when he fought Carl Roberson, great up in, he was coming up the division, great win streak, and then kind of just not in COVID, disappeared like a ghost. I feel like 21-22 was like the last time we were consistently seeing Marvin Vettori. And then since then, it's kind of just been, maybe one fight a year. Maybe
he's had some injuries and some other stuff in the process, which, unfortunately, through the nature of his style, him just kind of being a grinder, more of a grunt type of fighter in that way, eventually the body's going to start to fail. That's unfortunately the case that he's ran into. But another fight that it's on the main card that I think there is going to be a real telltale fight of where this guy actually is or what he presents, because in the very first outing that he had with the UFC, I think it's safe to say he laid an egg.
Yeah.
And that's Patricio Pitbull. Patricio Pitbull did not look good in his first fight in the UFC. You know, you could say that it was the bright light jitters, the first time, the anxiety of going to the octagon the first time, whatever, all that you want. He's taken on Dan Ige, who Dan Ige is a step back from, and it's not to slight Dan Ige by any means. Dan Ige is still a ranked featherweight, still a very quality opponent who is in the mix with some of the top dogs all across the world at 145, no matter what the fight. But I think that it's safe to say that he's not in the same tier of where Yair is basically looking on the outside of a title shot right now at this point. That's a good matchup stylistically also for Patricio to go in there, because Dan Ige is going to want to box with you. Yeah. Dan Ige is going to want to throw 4-ounce leather, and hey, whether it's you or me, let's see who's the last man standing.
Definitely, and I think, like you mentioned, not a slight on anyone, but top 5 compared to top 15. Just you see the gap at 145, especially. I think this is a matchup, and I want to get your opinion on this. I think this is a matchup that can present a lot more entertainment from a fan perspective, but also it gives both fighters room to work. Ige is not a bad grappler by any means, but he's also not afraid to step in the pocket. Whereas with Yair, we had more of a point fighting style, more of a karateka, like kind of kickboxing style. And we saw both guys in the last fight kind of very reserved. They didn't want to throw. But I'm curious to get your opinion on just the stylistic kind of approach for this fight for both gentlemen.
I mean, Dynamite Dan, 50K Ige. He's a scrapper, the top shota coming from the island. He wants to go out there and he wants to punch your lights out. He wants to win by knockout. He's not chasing a decision. He is chasing the glory to finish you and trying to go after bonuses. That's what Dan Ige wants to do in the process. And I think that he has evolved as a fighter and he's added new elements to his game throughout the years, but in large, like, that is what he wants to do. Dan Ige wants to go out there and he wants to uncork a bomb that puts your teeth through the back of your throat. That's how he wants to win fights. In this case, or in a lot of his highlight reel victories, that's also how Patricio rose to prominence, by having these fast twitch, one hitter quitter type of knockouts. That's how he won the Bellator title at certain points. That's how he had some of those career highlights.
Yeah.
Is that something, though, that translates? And we didn't see it in the first fight. Do we see that this weekend? That's why they fight the fight. But Dan, I want to ask you this, and we're running up on it a little bit with time-wise here, but I want to ask you, just because of your time in the game, your presence, your relational experiences with fighters from all across the world, procedurally, or maybe a rule, what is something out there in MMA right now that you would like to see change? Whether maybe it's something related to judging, the way that a fight is presented, what is something that you would like to see change? If you had to name something, I know I'm putting you on the spot with it, but what's one thing that you'd like to see?
Putting me on the spot, but a spot that I'm welcome to be in, and I have definitely encouraged. I think for me, the biggest thing I would love to see change with this sport, and this is if anyone's watching out there that can change this sentiment, is I would like to see a lot more cooperation between the people at the top of the sport and the people who are trying to cover it. I think that is the biggest grievance that I have with this sport, is that the perception of the media right now in mixed martial arts, bar it be Dana White talking about the media is this or the media is that, I think that it paints a negative perception on the young guys like myself who are coming up, trying to do some honest work, trying to work and do some. I got into social media because it's something that I enjoy. This is not what I'm going to school for. I do this for the love of the game. I do this because I love covering the sport of mixed martial arts. I love covering the UFC. I love covering One Championship. I love covering all these major organizations. I'm an engineering student by trade, I'm not a sports journalism guy. But the work that I put out, I can honestly hang my hat on that work and say I'm proud of what I put out. And I don't like that there are people at the top of the sport, let's say, bar it be managers, bar it be people in organizations that think, because you come from a certain background or because you're not someone who came from a conventional background, that your work can be discounted. Because I do think that there are young kids out there that are putting in really good work, and it's being grouped in with these guys that are looking to stir up controversies, create headlines, create fake news, fake fight announcements. You know, we're being characterized all as one, whereas it should be encouraged. You want a younger perspective. This sport's only getting younger in terms of the fan base. Over the past 5 years, I can't say the amount of people I've seen just who are young adults getting into mixed martial arts, where before it was only football, basketball, anything but mixed martial arts. And now, bigger than ever, I just think you guys got to give the young guys a shot and an opportunity to give the fighters what they deserve and give a dynamic perspective of how we cover the sport.
And I think that just to further that notion, the pull away from real journalism in mixed martial arts is going to ultimately be to the detriment of our growth as a sport. We used to have real, and granted, some of them are cornballs and I can't stand them, but we used to have real journalists who weren't afraid to ask the hard-hitting questions or to try to put Dana's feet to the fire with certain topics. And yeah, did he hate it? Absolutely. Was it something that visibly made him uncomfortable? 100%.
That's what journalism is.
That's why you had, or why there were people that should be mainstays like your Ariels and Lukes and all of that. And again, I'm not the biggest fan on a personal level of them, but you need to have at least some sort of differing perspective out there and someone that's also going to ask those hard questions. And that's where the issue lies, though, in that when any of those guys ever would try to do some real work in that sense, well, then their credentials get pulled. Or they're not being offered to additional events. It's gone by way of the insider, or excuse me, the influencer type of thing, to where it's all just kind of layup questions, or, you know, for lack of a better term, let's glaze you in the process. Or he just retired, but Kevin Iole was, to me, someone who completely gutted the integrity of some of the real journalism that could have been had. He was the mainstay fixture in Vegas who had the ultimate access through any of the trial of the antitrust lawsuit, any of those things. Not one single day did he show up to the court, take any statements, get any sort of actual journalistic pieces from those that are involved. Lots of these other actual events that are news that might not necessarily be something that is a stroke to the UFC,
we're showing up.
He wasn't a part of, or it was more or less like, hey man, like, you were a part of this Yahoo outlet, but were you somebody who was per the UFC's dime in that sense, which makes you question, because Ariel himself said that he got paid via the UFC when he was at Fox, which some people perceive as impermissible benefits, blah, 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 whatever. But the lack of real journalists and real journalism presence in mixed martial arts, especially here stateside, is ultimately going to be to the detriment of the growth. Moving along from that, though, we have one segment left here. It is what you have all been waiting for. 3 rounds. My man, Danny Bailey, behind the glass. We're going to get after it right now.
Well, the never-ending downward spiral continues for one Conor McGregor. He had quite the public birthday bender last week. Jordan, where would you like to begin?
Brother, he was yacked out of his mind on some disco dust that was pure as the driven snow at the BKFC presser, and where, based off of Mike Perry's 2%, 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, whatever that you want to say, based on his 2%, the statements that Conor said were borderline racist, saying, dance for me term. Not going to go that far with it, but he also got caught hooking up with a torta on the beach. He made an apology for his infidelity to his longtime partner in D. Devlin.
Continued
after that, but then proceeds to get outed by Azalea Banks, a one-hit wonder artist from 2012, for 2 of the most insanely egregious non-solicited prick pics that you could ever imagine. I mean, one with a caption that says, "Don't rat because rats get caught." And then the next one following that with a dumbbell strapped to his schlong that said, "Lifting weights."
Oh my God, bro.
I think we know what Ilya Toporia's next purchase on Amazon was as soon as he saw that. But yeah, Conor's never going to be the president of Ireland. He's never coming back to fight again. That's never happening.
Well, you don't remember Ilya on an interview said he was black from the waist down, so it's time to put it to the test, Ilya. No pressure.
Yeah. Wild situation. Next round.
All right, Karate Combat is having an 8-man kumite this weekend. Are you watching?
Man, I love what Karate Combat's doing with their shows. They present something that's different as far as a product in the marketplace for combat sports. It's entertaining and it draws interest. As a promoter and a promotion, that's what the goal is to create interest that draws eyes. When you draw eyes, that will eventually lead to revenue. Also, got to give a huge shout out to our friend of the program in Zach Paunga, who is going to be fighting in it. The tribal chief is going off to foreign lands to fight men's for a bag of money and gold. So shout out to you, Zach Paunga. Go out there, get that victory.
Yeah, I love what Karate Combat is doing right now. I think Asim Zaidi is an interesting character. I think he gets a little bit of a bad rap for the social media antics. Like, I think that people, especially from a conventional background, would come at him a little bit and he'd get a little bit of under fire. But I like what he's doing. He's doing something different. I think Karate Combat, the way that he runs it, kind of adjacent to the Goat Shed gym, is a little bit not my kind of cup of tea. I don't like the affiliation with a certain gym, but I get it. He's promoting it, so it's always like a good thing to get more eyeballs on a different combat sports kind of perspective or lens. And I think like what they're doing, it's an 8-man heavyweight tournament, right? So, and I know Alan Belcher is fighting on that, and I know we got Robelis of Spain and a couple of others. So it's going to be worth tuning into. If it's it's an all-day event, one man comes out on top, something different, something traditional. And as you guys can tell, I love tradition. I'm wearing the Affliction gear right now, so I can't complain about anything traditional. We get some Jean-Claude Van Damme style Karate Combat. I'm all for it.
And just as you said, President Awesome, he's not exactly my complete entire cup of tea or whatever in that sense, but I also understand that within the role that he is in, being the face of the organization, being a promoter, you have to almost be shameless in a lot of senses. Yeah. You have to be willing to take some chances, to do some things that at times you're going to look publicly foolish in the process, or say some things that maybe you don't even completely believe, but it's something that is a needle mover that, like when he was trying to take on one championship to some of these other stuff in the time frame. But what you did was you put eyes and interest on your product. Whether or not what you said was right or wrong, that is irrelevant. What you did was you as a promoter drew interest to your product, and you didn't do it in a doofus way like Don Davis from PFL.
Oh, man. Don't even talk about Don Davis. Oh, man, don't even bring that name up, bro.
But speaking of dumb moves, we'll go to number 3.
Vitor Belfort versus Wanderlei Silva boxing match agreed for Spaten Fight Night 2 event. Are you excited to see the Brazilian legends run it back 25 years later?
Absolutely not.
Why?
The promoter should be shunned and shamed. Vitor is still a physical freak. Vitor, if you were to look at Vitor doesn't look like he's that age in terms of bodies. He is running on rocket fuel. Wanderlei is a walking case of CTE. And I don't mean to say that in a disrespectful fashion. When they had the Fighter Summit a couple of years ago where they discussed CTE and brain trauma, the physical test, because you can't really tell while you're still alive, but there's certain things that they can do in terms of your cognition and ability, so on and so forth. And it was like some sort of like a 10-stage test, whatever along those lines. And as I remember, Wanderlei failed 8 of the 10. Yeah. So yeah, he's not in the greatest of conditions. And you just know from the style of fight that Wanderlei had throughout his entire career, he's taken so much damage.
Like
and
he fights with Crow Cop, like, dude.
Dan, those were what we saw fights in an actual sanctioned setting. That's not talking about what they did in Shoot the Box every day or the wars that they went through all the time. Like, there's the famous story about how him and Shogun fought for a puppy one time, and he knocked Shogun out for a puppy. Like, those guys used to knock each other out for fun on a Tuesday. So I don't agree with this fight happening. I think that this is even more egregious than when he fought Holyfield. Exactly. Holyfield has at least still been active, and he was at least still in shape and doing things. Yeah. Wanderlei he looks like a bowl of mashed potatoes. He hasn't been active for a long time, and you want to go put him in there just to box, and you want to let this yacked up, geeked up on every bit of
every drug under the sun,
best modern chemistry. You want to go put him in there against Vitor? Nah, I don't stand for that. But Just like that, though, folks, we are all out of time. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in and rocking with us each and every week for this original combat sports programming. Let us know what you think. Hit us up on social media on Mile High Sports or me, Jordan Kurtz, at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Want to give a big special thank you to the FightWave family out there, as well as specifically my man, Dan, for coming in and joining us all the way from California, making the trip out to Colorado, having the time to do it here with us here in studio. Want to thank Danny Bailey behind the boards, holding it down for us each and every week as we put out this show from the number 38 presented to you by Volo. We'll be back with you next week. I'm Jordan Kurtz. Give me that follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. This is the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports.